Thanks for stopping by Big Top Gaming. My name is Brian, and in this video, we're kind of doing more of a battle recap than a battle report at my not-so-local game store, Valhalla Games, or their online entity, Comic Games and things. I believe that's I'll leave a link to the description below because they do some online sales, so they're worth checking out. But we were supposed to have a Song of Ice and Fire tournament this last weekend here, and the date got shifted around a little bit, and it seemed like some people had some issues kind of bending around the change because the gaming space we played in we usually play in was getting renovated. So when I showed up, it was just me and one of the other folks that I play against on a semi-regular basis. So we decided to just kind of have a casual game day, and I had my... well, I guess casual. We brought our tournament list and just played them. But I brought my recording equipment anyways, just in case I had a chance to capture some stuff. So we just played a game, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of narrate a little bit on the game itself, and then talk about kind of the pairing that I brought and why I brought it and things like that. My opponent was Cole, and you'll meet Cole in the next video here. We have an actual real battle report that we'll be posting, but this one just is a little bit easier to kind of put up, so I started off with this one. So as the thumbnail would suggest, I decided to drop Stannis 2 or Stannis the One True King. So the list itself was Stannis Baratheon in a unit of Stag Knights. I brought a naked unit of R'hllor Lightbringers, a House Bolton Flayed Men unit with no attachments, and then a Dragonstone Noble. So that makes up the combat unit, so I'm pretty light on those, but within the NCUs is where there's a lot of power in the list, and we've brought along Roose Bolton, Melisandre, and Jaqen H'ghar. Now, the gist of this list is really to kind of lean into the panic game on the NCU side, so a lot of my damage is going to be coming from that tactics board and throwing panic tests out. The rest of my units can do that as well, between, Melisandre and Jaqen being able to put Vicious on the Stag Knights or the Dragonstone Noble when they need it, if we're early enough in the turns where the Stag Knights need it. And then I have a pretty small list to where I can kind of control where my opponents are going to be deploying, so they don't want to spread out too wide, because if they... that you could leave units off in the middle of nowhere, not having really much of a job other than sitting on an objective, because I've got so much. My combat power is really condensed into these 4 units, and power is a weird word when you look at like the Lightbringers and the Dragonstone Noble. So that's my list, and let's go ahead and take a look at what Cole was dropping today. So my opponent was wanting to try out a Baylon Greyjoy list, so he put Baylon in a unit of Blacktide Chosen, and then has a unit of Ironborn Bowmen. There's a unit of Drowned Men, which aren't on here because they're not in the app just yet, a unit of Ironborn Reavers with Asha and Carl, and then a unit of House Harlaw Reapers with Victarion Greyjoy. For the NCUs, we have Baron Blacktide and Windermere. Now, I believe my opponent opted for the choice to go first in this one. And for deployment, you can kind of see how I'm set up here. We're playing Dance with Dragons for what it's worth, but Victarion and the House Harlaw Reapers are on the very bottom of the screen on my opponent's side, and then next to them are the Ironborn Bowmen, and then next to them are, I believe, the Reavers, and then Baylon Greyjoy with the Blacktide Chosen are in the middle there. I might have the Reavers and the Bowmen. No, the Bowmen are where they are at. Sorry, I was like trying to figure out where everything's placed at, and I'm just having a little bit of an issue trying to figure it out. But for my deployment, I've got my Dragonstone Noble far on the outside towards the bottom of the screen, because it's not extremely mobile, but mobile enough to where I can, reposition it if I need to. The Flayed Men on the very far end to try and get a hold of that panic objective. Then my Lightbringers in the middle because they can be protected by the bog, and Stannis has some protection in the Stag Knights from that forest there, with the Ironborn Reavers Ironborn Bowmen kind of playing right opposite it. So between my turns here, I had trigger on my opponent's turn for Oath of Duty on the Flayed Men, I believe is where I put it, and then I have Test of Faith on the Stag Knights. my first activation was to take Melisandre and then zap the crap out of the Ironborn Bowman. And I did the wounds to my flayed men on this one, but now we've shaved off almost 2 ranks of the Ironborn Bowman with just an NCU activation on that crown zone. So you can see that Melisandre, if you haven't figured it out yet, she's quite powerful in being able to zap that down. So my opponent starts their turn out with using the Drown Men order to refill the Bowman. So I'm glad that that's out of the way. And then it forces my opponent to take the coin zone. And he's out of NCUs, which means that I've got access to a late turn combat, or the late turn combat position, or the swords. So that way I can use the Lightbringers to take some shots once the end of the turn comes around. So I used Jaqen to copy Melisandre, and for whatever reason I actually fail my panic test on my Stag Knights, which, you know, it is what it is. But this one, I believe I start zapping the Bowman again. I'm pretty sure I'm going after the Bowman because their morale's really low, so they're likely to fail it with all these big checks here. So I lose that, but this is, you know, I feel like Melisandre's ability is so powerful it should be a replace ability. So I don't draw my tactics cards and I don't put out the condition token. But, you know, I think I correct that a little bit later in the game, and it might be actually later. So my opponent now is just he only has activations on the table. So the Reavers saunter up with Asha in the unit and Carl. So I'm not too worried about Carl coming after my attachments, but I wouldn't mind getting her out of the picture early. So my Lightbringers are marching up in the bog, so now at least my opponent they won't be able to get any kind of bonuses when they charge at them, so that's going to be quite nice for me. It's kind of like a little bunker for them where they can just kind of shoot between those 2 areas there. Next up, the Drown Men just take a maneuver to kind of position around, and after that I activate Roose and use his order to panic the Asha and the Ironborn Reavers, and then I take the Sword Zone to shoot with the Lightbringers. I think we connect 4 times, and the Reavers save isn't great, so I'm looking for some good gains here, and it looks like my opponent fails 3 of those saves, and now they've got panic with no pluses at all, so that's nice. And we also get, so I don't need to use Roose to do that, or to do anything with the panic token, so that gets to stay on them since they failed it, and I didn't feel like I needed to fish. So I'm already getting quite a bit of work done and making it difficult for my opponent when it comes to their turn again for figuring out like which unit they should heal. I mean, the Bowmen are probably less likely to need to heal, but you know, this way my opponent gets kind of forced into taking zones to keep his units healthy. I believe the Windermere token got used also on the Ironborn Bowmen just to get them up to full ranks, but they didn't really need it because they have full ranks on their second anyways. So Victarion and the Reapers just kind of march up, getting ready to take the that first objective there. So I think I can just kind of draw out some activations. I want to see where Baylon's going to get going before I activate my my flayed men. So I put my Stag Knights just in a position where they're able to be safe from the woods and try and stave off some of those chip shots from the Ironborn archers. Now, Panic and Vulnerable got put on my Stag Knight unit, and I can't remember which... oh, no, it's Warcry. That's right. I was like, oh, a card did it, but no, it's Warcry because Asha's in front of him. But I'm not overly concerned about that. Between Resilience and Test of Faith and having a really decent morale stat with Stannis attached to them, I don't think it's something that I rightly care about. So the Flayed Men... they decide to go now. I think maybe I was just getting in my own head a little bit. So I saved the Dragonstone Noble for last. I think my opponent's trying to figure out like where that thing could possibly go. But the Flayed Men are just kind of in a position where if Baylon does come into either Stannis or the Lightbringers, that the Flayed Men are going to be getting a side charge just to try and negate that tree bonus a little bit. And that's a difficult position for Cole to be put in terms of figuring out what Baylon actually gets to do this turn. So you can see he's a hemming and a hawing pretty hard. So he decides to march up. He's got first turn next, so he'll be able to get Baylon to just kind of charge out and do whatever. And this way he's getting the dragon egg too. So we're starting starting the scoring a little early, or hoping to start scoring a little early, I guess, because Baylon does keep the morale decent on the Black Tide Chosen, so they shouldn't have too many issues. My Dragonstone Noble decides to get out of dodge because I don't want to just feed him to Victarion's unit, and that's a lot of points over there on the side that aren't going to be doing anything. Worth noting, my opponent did forget about Relentless Order this turn, and I feel like I think he forgot about it for a bit. I wasn't paying enough attention during the game to be able to remind him to use it, but I think I do pretty quickly here. So, I guess I keep forgetting to, like, I have the first turn, so Baylon's kind of in a weird position right now, sitting on that zone. So I opt to take the swords right away because I have those Lightbringers there. And the Melisandre Panic Test, I think we did the Stag Knights again, where we took the 2 off of them. And then we did Baratheon Conviction so that I can just restore the 2 wounds that I took so they're not in a whole lot of danger. I want to say we're doing the Reavers again. Yeah, we hit the Reavers with 4 damage, so they're really low. And that allows me to shift with my Lightbringers with the Sword Zone and take some shots at them. I had to shift them sideways in order to get line of sight on them. It was really tight there between the tree and Baylon's unit. So I only need to do 3 wounds to them to get them to get taken off. And I think I connect 3 times, so it wasn't the greatest. But it's enough to remove the unit. They didn't pass a save. So at the top of 2, I've already ripped one of the more dangerous units off the table. And that was mostly just in due because of my ridiculous NCU suite. So I think Cole's kind of in a pickle right now because the support that Baylon was going to have from those Ironborn Reavers is now not an option anymore. So Baylon's kind of hanging out on his own while Victarion and the Bowmen are kind of partying off on the side. So I think Baylon decides to charge into the Lightbringers because they are dangerous. And he thinks that he can, I imagine he thinks he can try and do quite a bit of work to them in one swing. I think during this game, Cole he's a main, not a main, he likes the Stannis side of the Baratheons. It's the one he says he plays the most or wants to enjoy the most, but could never get a Stannis 2 list to really function the way he wanted it to. So I think with him going into the Lightbringers, he was maybe expecting less out of, or he was expecting Baylon's unit to do more to them than what they actually did. The R'hllor Lightbringers are actually quite survivable for what they are. I mean, they've got a 4/6 stat for defense and morale, but that didn't really save them so much because they took a ton of wounds after panic and saves. But they're still there, and that's all that really matters. That just needed to not get them wiped in one turn, which Black Tide Chosen can't really do. So I think this was Baratheon Justice. Yeah, Baratheon Justice. So I got vulnerable and panicked on Baylon Greyjoy's unit. And now I've got some options here. I've got, Stannis is sitting on the side a little bit. I might be in a little bit of danger of a Victarion charge or something. But instead of activating my NCUs, I decide to see if the Flayed Men can get some work done on Baylon's rear. So the maneuver is enough to get the majority in the backside of Baylon. So we just roll the dice and charge it out. So they end up connecting in the backside. And let's see here. So I think I was maybe contemplating a card or something. Oh, yeah, I was playing Ours is the Fury. So I have Critical Blow anyways. And then I also have... I didn't need Sundering from the back, so I decided to go with the +1 to hit. And then I just, instead of keeping any hits, I just reroll anything that isn't a 6. And it ends up working out all right for me because I think it was 9 saves that I ended up getting through on this one, or maybe 8, something like that. Yeah, it was 8. So a pretty decent amount of damage done to Baylon's unit, and that's before the panic happens. So we're -4 all day, or -5 all day from Intimidating Presence, but I think I forgot to factor in Intimidating Presence on this one. Just a lot of rules to remember with this list that I haven't really utilized a whole bunch before. So really, Baylon should have 1 wound on him right now, but it was something that we had forgotten. And we might actually backwards, and I know one of the panic chests we had to backwards engineer to kind of make it work. So I think we messed this one up and we fix it pretty quick here. But now with Cole, he's kind of in this very not fun position. The drowned men are very far back, so they're not able to put healing where they need to put it. And I don't think Cole is very interested in trying. He kind of has to balance out, like, what do I do with the tactic zone here, because healing Baylon's unit might just be kind of delaying the inevitable. But it seems like it's something that has to be done here. So he opts to take Windermere and throw him on the coin zone to try and get Baylon's unit sticking around. I think maybe he was figuring out which one of the tokens to remove, and I think we got rid of the panic one, since panic really turns on a lot of stuff here. But with Roose being able to put the panic token back on, it's kind of hard to. Either way, you kind of pick the wrong token, I think. So I opt to use Stannis' unit to charge. And so they're out on the side, and it's turn 2, so they're only getting critical blow, I think is what turn 2 is for them. So I connect with everything. No need to reroll, and I'm not going to get crazy or fish for things. So I think with just the dice there, I think Baron Blacktide's also on this. Oh no, Baron isn't on this unit yet. Maybe he was. Maybe it was Baron that took that zone and not Windermere. I'm not 100% sure. But with Melisandre's Vicious, we're not quite able to get the morale to crack on them, and missing the panic token was unfortunate here. But Baylon's still sitting on two bodies, so I think this is where Cole's trying to figure out if he can march the drowned men up far enough to heal Baylon's unit, but they're just a little bit shy of being able to do anything with that. So he decides to take the crown zone from me. Yeah, I think it was Baron that went on Baylon, and that's why they're still around, because I can see Windermere's little bird there. So Windermere takes the crown. And this was a we do not sow trigger that I think he's contemplating. And it's like, should I do it on the bowman and just try and take some shots somewhere, or should I just like go with Baylon's unit? So he does decide to go with Baylon's unit to try and get some more damage into the Lightbringers, but they end up passing both of their saves. Like 4+ is no joke on archers. I think they're deceptively survivable, that people just don't give them enough credit for that. So at this point, all 3 of my combat units have activated, and I can kind of run the table on the NCU board between the tactics zone and the maneuver. So my Lightbringers, very much importantly, have not activated yet. So I think what I'm trying to do here is figure out the order of things that I need to do, or I don't want to risk giving Baylon more wounds. So I end up taking Jaqen on the tactics board, and I think this is where I finally remember that this is where I finally remember that I can draw cards, I believe, because I've been burning through my cards like crazy in this game. I have not ended a turn yet with having cards in my hand, I think. And I mean, it's only turn 2, but at the end of this turn, spoiler, I don't have cards in my hand, because I think I did again forget that I could use the zone. So the Dragonstone Noble takes his damage for Jaqen, because if you haven't used the Dragonstone Noble, he ends up doing more hits when he gets wounds on him. So I ended up doing that to him to try and turn him on. I felt like I was a little bit more safe back here from the bowman, so I could exist over here and not worry too much about some chip damage. And at this point, I think the panic test that ended up happening, I threw that at Baylon's unit, and they ended up passing, which is a bummer. But the drowned men end up activating to throw some wounds back into the bowman, just so that they can keep fueling things back up. And then the bowmen end up doing a raiding call to try and get some more wounds back into Baylon's unit there. So Baylon's holding the center pretty tightly, and now my plan of being able to retreat my Lightbringers out is maybe a little bit more difficult to make happen. So let's see what's going on now. I think Cole's just kind of up against the ropes right now, so he's trying to really figure out what it is he's wanting to do here. And I think he was curious if he could see the Dragonstone Noble, because he was fishing for that one wound left on him. And he did have the back end of the the back end of the base and was shooting on the flank. So I'm just hopeful that, or no, this was shooting into Stannis' unit on the side. Sorry. So he was able to get the shot there. I used the resilience order, and I have Test of Faith up. So I end up only failing or only passing one of those, but my opponent uses the vulnerable token to make me fail another one, so I lose one or two bodies, I think. And then the panic test is perfectly fine, and then it kind of turns into a wash because he has iron, or Stannis brings Iron Resolve, so when they pass, they heal one. But I think now we might be farting around with a Baylon thing. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what happened here. I think I might be checking some rules too on shooting. Oh no, that's right. It was Baylon had a panic test because of the shot from the bowman, and I was just double checking here. I don't often get into multiple engagements like this when someone's shooting at me, so I didn't know if all of my units engaged needed to take a morale test or not, and I end up finding out that it's only the enemy unit that's engaged with the friendly needs to take it, so my Lightbringers and my Flayed Men are perfectly fine. So my Dragonstone Noble decides to maneuver and then charge Baylon on the side because I want to make sure that since he's only got one wound left, that I do the best I can to try and use him before he goes down. Because I don't think, even at a 2+ save, that's still like the chance of something happening is a little bit wonky. And I think now what we might be doing is doing the math on the Flayed Men's intimidating presence from the failed morale test that he had. So it's just trying to reverse engineer some of that stuff. At least for this one activation. I think we're not trying to go back too far. This is, like I said, this is where I remember that intimidating presence is an actual thing. So now we're doing the math on, I think, on Baylon's failed morale test that happened from the Ironborn shooting. So lots of checks and balances here. There's just a bunch going on in the middle of the table. And like for me, I know for sure this is the first time I've played this list. And I think for Cole, it might be, I know he's played these Greyjoy units before, but I don't think enough to, or maybe Baylon, this might be the first Baylon game. I'm not 100% certain on that. But the way we end up figuring it out is that Baylon does fail the test, but somehow has an extra wound remaining from some other stuff going on. But the Dragonstone Noble charges in, and I think at first I thought that the hits were automatic, but the hits are automatic from him. So I didn't have the actual card on me for whatever reason. I guess I must have left it at home. So we did a bunch of damage to Baylon, and now we're getting another. We got another morale test there. So now everything is right with the world, and Baylon's got two wounds left in his unit. And I still haven't done my trick of Roose Bolton trying to take down that unit. I think we're still talking about Baylon. It's like the modifiers get pretty intense with that middle zone there. I think every single one of my units in my army is engaged. Every single one of my units in my army is engaged with Baylon. But this is kind of how I felt with designing the list, is that I'm able to kind of just pick one thing and tear it apart, and then my opponent kind of has to come to me anyways. And as a Baratheon player, I think that's what you want anyhow, is your opponent to come to you where the game is actually happening. So I take Roose and panic Baylon's unit because I want to make sure that he goes away, and I retreat away enough to end my movement not within an inch, and then take a shot. My hope is not my hope. My next turn is to take a shot at Baylon since we're not in combat with him anymore. And then those drowned men just kind of they slink up the table to get into position to hopefully heal Baylon, but I think we're still kind of out of range a little bit. This is where I finally now have reminded my opponent I recognized that he hadn't been using Relentless, so if he activates the Drowned Men right now, he doesn't get access to Relentless. So I let him, I had advised that he go back and just use the Relentless first to take the maneuver with Victarion's unit. It's 2 inches, but every bit counts for getting there with carrying that dragon egg. So now the Lightbringers get to activate. They're throwing 6 dice at Baylon's side, and I just need a couple of them to connect. And I end up wiping the unit just off of the shot. So no, I didn't have to worry about getting to panic. And then the rest of my units get to pivot and kind of position where they need to for next turn. So I'm using the Dragonstone Noble to try and block some line of sight to Stannis here. When you put the tree and the unit base together, you can kind of stop your opponent from shooting at you. So I feel like I've got the line of sight blocked pretty well here. But we're going into turn 3, and my opponent's only got 3 combat units on the table, and 2 of those are very much not long for this world. Points-wise, I think I've scored 3 so far because I only have... I just have the one objective with... the flayed men from the center, and then I decided to kind of abandon that the objective that's on the side, on the top side of the screen. Sorry. So I feel like my list has enough momentum to where I can. I don't need to worry so much about keeping up in the scoring game, and I've kept my opponent pretty down on points. So I feel like I'm in a pretty powerful spot right now with having all 4 of my combat units healthy and ready to go, and my opponent, his most effective combat unit, is carrying an egg that makes him speed 2. So I think Cole's just got a lot of thinking on how he wants to do things right now. First, I think the Baron Blacktide is the one that needs to come out because he is going to try and at least save my opponent from some of the damage that'll be coming at him. So I think this is where it's not so much a trap, but I think oftentimes people don't feel like forests do a whole lot in the game because shooting isn't the most prevalent thing in A Song of Ice and Fire. It's more like just kind of chip shots here and there. But this is my opponent's measuring. He's like, okay, well, I can get the measurements here, but at this point, I think is where I tell him that the line of sight isn't something that you can get from Stannis's unit because of the. So I didn't bring my laser with me. I was being a dum-dum, but I use my tape measure here to try and draw line of sight, and with the positioning of the Dragonstone Noble and where that forest is, there isn't a straight line that at least we can find that traces over to Stannis's unit. So I do protect Stannis from the shot on this one, but I think I probably would have preferred that Stannis take the hit here because I don't want to lose my Dragonstone Noble just yet. I would like to keep him a little longer. Not that it's a big deal. Like, losing the Dragonstone Noble wouldn't completely ruin my game here or anything. It's just that I would like to try and, keep him on the board as long as possible with being able to throw, 4 auto hits with the damage that he's taken so far. I also, for whatever reason, have decided to forget that Sentinel is a thing that exists on his card this game. So the Flayed Men go for their very important job of just kind of taking out the Drowned Men, or trying to at least. So they get connected in on the side there, and I probably should have shifted them up to be 50% on the more of my opponent's side of their back end there, so that they could get just a little bit closer to the Ironborn bowmen. So I throw some dice, and I don't hit the greatest in the universe. I think I did all right here. I think it was maybe, 7 or 6 or something like that. Yeah, 7 hits, and of those, my opponent failed 3 of them, or failed enough to take 3 wounds and had 1 wound remaining, but ended up, even after Vicious and Intimidating Presence and the side had passed their morale check. So I wasn't able to one-shot the Drowned Men, which I was a little bit on the sad side here. I would have liked to have just kind of peeled through them, but it's really just a good example of how resilient the Drowned Men can be, especially against a unit that's kind of really teched towards taking them out. Not that I would say that Flayed Men are teched, it's just that they can throw a lot of damage and their panic is actually pretty reliable. So I think the Relentless Order on Victarion is used to kind of slowly creep up on Stannis' unit here. But I know that Cole hasn't actually activation fired his Ironborn Bowman just yet. So I decide to take my own advice and get the Dragonstone Noble into combat just so that it stops my opponent from shooting at the Dragonstone Noble, because I feel like that's a little bit more it's more dangerous for him to be shooting at that than it is for him to be shooting at my Stag Knights. So the Dragonstone Noble ends up picking up the Drowned Men, and that takes me up to I think 5 points is what I'm at right now for victory points, and I just have to figure out where I want to surge with him. So I decide that, I guess like maybe I shouldn't talk about what I'm thinking because I don't know what I was thinking. But I decide to go back and close the gap on Stannis' unit, just to try and maybe save some shots on him. I'm like, the Dragonstone Noble's done his work, so I can just go ahead and keep blocking him off, or blocking Stannis off with that one solo there. It makes it very difficult for my opponent to meaningfully get work in if he's planning on trying to long bomb a charge with those House Harlaw Reapers. But I think at this point, Cole kind of he sees the writing on the wall. I haven't activated a single NCU yet, and they're very capable of being able to machine gun down a unit that has some pretty low morale. So I think he's just trying to find ways to make the best out of what he's got here. So I think he decides to take the shot at the Dragonstone Noble just to try and pick up some points because, it's rolling ones. That's what you need. So I do roll 2 1s on this. So the Dragonstone Noble does go down, netting him another victory point and taking away an activation from me. But at this point, the Dragonstone Noble's done more than what its points were worth, like picking up Baylon's unit and picking up the Drowned Men. So I think, well, he didn't pick up Baylon's unit, but he did he did enough work to them to be able to make it so that the Lightbringers could pick him up. So now I'm just going to go ahead and double zap the Bowman with Melisandre and the Crown, and I take the damage on my Lightbringers. They're within short range of the tree, and they've got the 6-up morale, so they end up passing it. Really, like, now that they've kind of done their work, I don't really need them to stick around so much, so I'm not too worried about them taking some Melisandre wounds. So the Bowmen fail both of their panic tests and remove, I think it was like 6 or 7 bodies, or no, it was 4. I'm being over generous here, or no, it was 6. 6 bodies, I think, came off of there. I don't know. You guys are watching, so you'll be able to tell. It was a pretty devastating panic test. And I think Cole at this point says, I'm pretty sure the game's over at this point, but he was like, I think I might want to, and then I told him, like, well, you could maybe see if Victarion can do some cool stuff, like use your Relentless Order and then make a 4-inch charge, or roll a 4 charge. So it's like a 6-inch charge that he needs to make on the side. So, I think that's what he ends up doing here is just trying to make sure, because like I could like maneuver over to get out of the way or something like that, but I want to get the Ironborn Bowman gone just to pick up some points, and the Jekken Crown Zap takes care of it. And I think at this point was where I finally remembered that you could use the zone at the same time, so it took until turn 3 to get there, but I figured it out. So my opponent goes for that charge, rolls the 4, exactly what he needed. I think Victarion's unit does have a weakened token on them right now, at least. That's what I put on them from the tactics zone. So their efficacy is a little bit lowered for going into that unit. And I do pop the resilience order for this one just so I can try and stick around, because I know, like, insult to injury, I would not like to lose my commander unit right now, even though I'm in a really commanding position in the game right now. But all things, I'm not quite sure. Oh, this was Price of Failure. Price of Failure is what caused the 1 wound on him, but he auto hits with all of them, and I'm going for a 5+ save on the side, so it's not looking super great for them. I don't think I have a vulnerable token on me, so I only lose 2 guys, and I pass the morale test even after. Oh no, maybe I think I might have failed morale test with Vicious and on the side. So either that or I lost 3. But at any rate, now oh no, I lost 3 from the save because this is me playing. What is it? It's the auto pass morale one if you're a R'hllor unit. I can't quite remember what the name of the card is, but it came in handy there pretty well. Next up, I think it's either Ours is the Fury or Baratheon Justice here. I can't remember which one it was. That card has a really long name. I'm not 100% sure what exactly I did here. maybe it's making him take a panic test or something like that. Baratheon, yeah, probably Baratheon conviction or something like that makes him take a panic test after hitting me. So now I think is where I play Ours is the Fury, maybe? I'm not sure. I don't know what it is I'm playing here for cards. I did not keep... Oh, maybe I just triggered an Oath of Duty or something like that right away. But the Stag Knights are swinging, and it might have been Sustained Assault is what I played. I'm not... Like I said, I can't remember quite. It's hard when you're at these events where you can't set your camera up the way you want to. But Victarion's unit goes down in just the swing with Critical Blow and all that other stuff. So that was the end of the game. I think we had a good run here with the list. I know it really does, like, by turn 3 the game was over. I definitely like kind of bullied my opponent with the NCUs. But when you have a list like this, like the Stannis list that, and I think this is what I'm explaining here, is that most of my damage comes from my NCUs. And that's not something that you'll typically see with any other list. I think Stannis's configuration is uniquely positioned to where your NCUs can just do so much work throughout the game, where it was at the beginning of the game that my opponent almost was in the danger zone of losing a unit just from all the panic tests that I was able to throw out at him. And you also, as someone playing against this type of list, you kind of get confused on what you want to do, because there's a lot of those early tactic zones that you want to take, but you risked kind of taking up to 4 different panic tests in that game, in that one turn, then just from having the crown zone open. And it just is really dangerous. I think some people might look at this list as kind of like really fragile. I think if I were playing against something that had more activations, I might be a little bit concerned, but more activations typically mean lower morale, so I'm able to shave them off pretty quickly as well. But the condensed list makes it so that I can force my opponent to go where I want them to. Like, I don't spread out like crazy. They don't get to pick their matchups real easily, because when you're deploying out, if I condense my stuff in one particular area, it's really difficult for you to respond in a way where you can get all the things you want to get. I just think that there's a lot of fun. For me, it was fun to play this list because it's very different from what I normally play. I've never tried the Melisandre Roose Jaqen combo with this one, and having so few combat activations kind of made it so that my choices were a lot easier to make. And with having 3 NCUs, of course, you can draw it out to where you're making the best choices with the information that you have, because you're able to... You can almost make it so that your opponent has no more ability to respond to what's going on the table. Like, once they've activated out, they have no more ways on the tactics board to get extra actions. So, like with that retreat thing with the Lightbringers, like, you know, Baylon was 100% not going to be doing anything different. So I was able to just kind of get him off there, or get my unit off of him and shoot, just because my opponent didn't have many options left. So I think the Greyjoys do like to kind of control the tempo of the game, or the momentum in the game, but with this list, they just weren't able to get out from under it. I think Baylon's list was really trying to always kind of get back into it as the game started slipping away, and with every single unit that came off, that just kind of got further and further away. So let me know what you think about this format. I try to play in at least one tournament each month. These types of videos are something that I can shoot pretty regularly. And I know we have like a traditional, what I would consider a traditional for my channel, battle report coming up soon. We just have to record the audio for it. But I am interested to see what people kind of thought about this type of delivery. I know it's a lot of me talking, and I feel like when there's a lot of dead space, I feel like I have to talk more. But I just really think that this is a fun way to kind of display what's going on with a particular list. Like, I can talk about these things constantly by showing you the lists and saying, here's the synergies. But when you actually see what the lists can do, that's when you get to see the theory kind of come alive on the table. So I'm interested to kind of see what people's reaction is to this. Otherwise, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.